Would the time-traveling powers of Mephiles the Dark work inside Infinite's Null space? And could Infinite use the power of the Phantom Ruby to create Mephiles' greatest fear, an unbroken scepter of darkness? I'm gonna answer all these questions and more today as I explore the hypothetical outcome of the battle between the Sonic franchise's two edgiest villains, Mephiles the Dark and Infinite the Jackal. Now, if you think you already know the outcome of this fight, you're definitely going to want to stick around until the end. I think I've uncovered something that everyone has missed about the Phantom Ruby's strength in comparison to the Master Emerald. You're not going to want to miss it. But enough chit-chat, grab a chili dog, and let's get down to brass tacks. To fully appreciate this battle, we first need to unpack exactly who these villains are and what they're capable of, starting with Mephiles. Created by the scientists of Soliana when they split the sun god Solaris in half in a failed attempt to unlock the powers of time travel, Mephiles is the mind and will of that god made manifest, a twisted entity of darkness and cunning. Initially captured by Shadow the Hedgehog in the Scepter of Darkness, Mephiles escaped when the scepter was damaged, now with two goals in mind. Torment Shadow, the being who defeated him and captured him for decades, and realize his union with the Flames of Disaster Iblis, which was trapped inside Princess Elise. Mephiles knew that combining their powers again would restore his full godly form as Solaris, effectively making him unstoppable. Over the course of Sonic 06, Mephiles became one of the most menacing villains the Sonic franchise has ever known. He's the only character in the series who successfully killed Sonic outright, setting off events leading to his brief return as Solaris. Eventually, though, he was defeated by Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, teaming up at their absolute strongest, wielding the full power of the Chaos Emeralds. After Solaris' defeat, Sonic and Elise extinguished his flame, effectively rewriting history and removing Mephiles entirely from existence. Yet, despite his permanent erasure, Mephiles resurfaced briefly in Shadow Generations. The Time Eater's meddling had freed him temporarily, allowing Mephiles to exist in a displaced state outside regular time and space, showing us that he retains awareness of his own paradoxical nature, and is still dangerous even outside conventional reality. That said, he was defeated and resealed by a doom-powered Shadow. Mephiles, as the essence of Solaris' consciousness, cannot truly die. He's immortal. You might defeat him temporarily, but he always survives in some form, plotting his next move from the shadows. Speaking of shadows, he can teleport through them, emerging unexpectedly behind enemies for surprise attacks. He's able to generate spheres of dark energy, his signature move, allowing him to travel freely across the timeline. These spheres also serve as projectiles, capable of damaging opponents or forcibly teleporting them. In terms of his physicality, Mephiles originally had no material form. He only took shape after mimicking Shadow, after which he grew increasingly more powerful and dangerous, eventually evolving to his signature crystalline form. For melee, he can generate a crystal energy blade capable of slicing through practically anything. It was powerful enough to instantly one-shot Sonic, and it can be extended over long distances, sort of like Vegeto's Spirit Sword from Dragon Ball. Finally, Mephiles is a very capable user of the Chaos Emeralds, absorbing and manipulating their energy to grant himself strength, create shockwaves, and can even summon other emeralds directly to his location, a super broken ability. Chaos energy can also be used to summon shadow minions, clone himself countless times to create an army, and grant other people visions. It's possible he can use them to peer into others' minds, which seems supported by how much he knows about Shadow, but this is mostly speculation. If he wants, Mephiles can summon his clones back into himself to generate a giant monstrous form, capable of devastating attacks, including an incredibly powerful laser blast from his singular eye. Mephiles is definitely strong, but his greatest strength is as a Machiavellian schemer. He dwells in the shadows and manipulates events to suit his goals, only striking at opportune moments. He manipulated over 200 years of history to achieve his ultimate goal of godhood, and in the end, the only way to put him down for good was to stop him from ever being born in the first place. But what does being born matter to something without beginning or end? Something truly infinite. Originally known as the Ultimate Mercenary and a member of the Jackal Squad that attacked an Eggman base, he had a chance encounter with the Phantom Ruby that Eggman was experimenting on. Touching the gem, it displayed for both of them his innermost desire, a chaotic, destroyed world left ravaged by his anger and hatred. Eggman saw his potential for evil along with his affinity for the Phantom Ruby and co-opted this Jackal into his army. After suffering a loss to Shadow, the Jackal threw away his original identity and embraced Eggman's experimentation, transforming him into Infinite, the embodiment of illusion and fear who wields the unending power of augmented reality. Infinite's entire persona is built around his new powers granted by the Phantom Ruby. He's obsessive about dominance, believing himself superior to all other life forms. His vendetta against Shadow and Sonic's team stems directly from his shattered pride, seeking to prove himself as the strongest creature alive. Not weak, as he repeatedly insists to us. This power comes entirely from his implanted copy of the Phantom Ruby, giving him an insane arsenal. Infinite can create illusions, manipulating people's visual and depth perception enough to actually interact with them, and even create real matter out of temporary virtual material. These constructs are indistinguishable from reality, directly interacting with the physical world. Beyond simple things like weapons and barriers, he can also create armies of Phantom duplicates, including powerful enemies like Chaos, Zavok, and Metal Sonic. He can manipulate his own size to grow bigger or smaller, fly, levitate, control gravity, generate energy attacks, make phantom copies of himself, and even create a sun in the palm of his hand like Father from Full Metal Alchemist. He can also banish others to the Null space, a completely empty void of complete nothingness. Here, only those capable of dimensional travel themselves could possibly escape. He can use the Ruby to warp space-time, teleporting himself and others around like Chaos Control, cross dimensions, and even interfere with technology, preventing the Miles Electric from getting proper readings. And remember, this is all the copy of the Phantom Ruby. The original was able to strong-arm the Master Emerald, knocking Angel Island out of the sky. When the Phantom King was powered by the original Ruby in Sonic Mania, he was able to damage the normally invulnerable Super Sonic, and even separate Sonic from the Chaos Emeralds. On top of all this ridiculous hacks, the Ruby made Infinite extremely powerful too. He initially matches and even surpasses Sonic's speed and combat prowess, effortlessly defeating him. Omega, Silver, and an entire Resistance army, single-handedly. And this is all because of the Ruby copy's power source. It draws on the negative energy of others, specifically their fears and insecurities, growing stronger the more afraid his enemies are. But all of this does have a significant catch. Infinite's powers hinge entirely on the Phantom Ruby copy's proximity to the original Ruby. If disconnected, his powers vanish instantly. He's also incredibly arrogant, overconfident, and vindictive to the point of recklessness, potentially his greatest weakness. So, who comes out on top? Because of the hacks-based abilities of both characters, there are a lot of factors to pick apart here. The first argument I want to unpack is this. Infinite has a Phantom Ruby copy, and the Ruby is explicitly stronger than the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald, so Infinite should completely outclass Mephiles, even if he has all 7 emeralds, right? Well, I don't think it's that simple. In fact, I don't think the Phantom Ruby is stronger than the Chaos Emeralds at all, despite all of the evidence and everyone who says so, even though it knocked down Angel Island and hurt Sonic in his super form. Here's my argument. The Phantom Ruby isn't actually stronger than the Emeralds, it simply manipulates them through fear. Think about it. Knuckles knocked Super Sonic out of his transformation in Sonic 3, not because he's physically stronger than Super Sonic, but because he manipulated the Emerald's chaos energy. Shadow does a very similar thing in Sonic Movie 3. These characters aren't surpassing the Emeralds through raw power, they're influencing them through emotional or chaos manipulation. Similarly, the Phantom King didn't overpower Super Sonic directly. He disrupted the Emerald's energies by manipulating fear. We know the Chaos Emeralds reflect whatever's in your heart. When Sonic uses positive emotions, he becomes supersonic. When Chaos used his negative emotions, he became the monstrous Perfect Chaos. So the theory I'm positing is that the Phantom Ruby isn't actually stronger than the Master or Chaos Emeralds, it's just manipulating them like the characters do, because it deals in negative emotions like fear. And this tracks, by the way. Eggman's Force's Death Egg robot, which is powered by the true original Phantom Ruby, is defeated by modern Sonic, classic Sonic, and the Avatar. a trio that is nowhere near the power level of a super form. The Phantom Ruby isn't stronger than the Master or Chaos Emeralds, it just manipulates fear, which, as corny as it sounds, is why the heroes win in Sonic Forces. Their trust and friendship was stronger than their fear. So with that tangent out of the way, we'll need to scale these two characters another way. Luckily, that is pretty easy. In terms of raw strength and speed, we know definitively that Infinite is superior to Mephiles. Why? Well, Sonic, Shadow, and all the main players in the franchise all get stronger and faster with each passing game. We see classic Sonic grow stronger in generations as he learns the boost. It took Super Sonic to defeat Perfect Chaos in Sonic Adventure, but base Sonic managed it in generations. And in Sonic Forces, Sonic says directly to Infinite that he grows stronger and faster as time goes on, which is why he fared better in later fights against the villain. Since Infinite easily overpowered Forces-era Sonic, and that Sonic vastly outclasses the Sonic and Shadow of 06, who were roughly equal to Mephiles, Infinite should dominate Mephiles in direct combat. But these two basically never use direct combat. They deal in hacks and reality manipulation, so it's time to unpack that. Off the top, Mephiles is immortal. Infinite could beat him up for days and blast him with 100 suns, but he'll just keep regenerating out of the darkness over and over again. Infinite is stronger, but he needs something special to actually win this fight. The first possible win condition is for Infinite to trap Mephiles in null space. Mephiles can time travel pretty freely, which normally lets him escape these sorts of traps, but null space is specifically described as a Terran reality where space and time do not exist. You can't time travel in a dimension where time does not pass. The only way Sonic and the Avatar escaped null space was by moving fast enough to tear a hole in the fabric of the dimension, something Mephiles can't do. He's too slow, and if he could, he would have been able to escape his deleted timeline in Shadow Generations. It's just not within his skill set. Another possible way for Infinite to win is by creating a replica of the Scepter of Darkness, the magic relic that Shadow originally used to seal away Mephiles. This is totally within the bounds of the Ruby's abilities, and would probably work really well, but Infinite would need to know about the Scepter first. Luckily, this is something he might be able to do. After all, the Ruby operates on the fears of others, and as an immortal, Mephiles only fears one thing: imprisonment. That said, it's not in Infinite's repertoire to generate an enemy's specific fear. Otherwise, he probably would have just blasted Sonic with an ocean of water. Now, Mephiles does help his own chances in this fight with his extremely busted ability to summon the Chaos Emeralds to himself. With all 7, he's much more powerful. Not as much as a super form, but it's definitely a boost, and his army of unending clones would at the very least annoy Infinite. Unfortunately, Mephiles is not fearless, and he doesn't operate in the realm of positivity. If the Ruby picks up any fear from him, which it absolutely would if he saw null space and grew scared of being trapped there, Infinite could just dispel the Chaos Emeralds out of Mephiles, just like the Phantom King did to Super Sonic. All that said, Mephiles isn't completely hopeless. He is extremely smart and conniving, while Infinite is sorta like a big rampaging baby. If Mephiles can manage to suss out how the Ruby copy functions, he could theoretically make an army of copies to keep Infinite occupied, sneak one clone away to time travel to the past and learn more about the original Ruby, then return to the present and sabotage it. Realistically, this is what he would attempt to do. He loves to scheme and plan. But this is a tough strategy that relies on Mephiles absolutely cinching like 50 skill checks in a row. It's definitely a possible win condition, but super unlikely. That said, he's the only guy in the whole series who ever managed to kill Sonic, and Infinite's greatest flaw is his cockiness. So, if somebody could pull this off, it would be Mephiles. Lastly, sorta just as a fun what-if scenario, if Mephiles somehow managed to get his hands on the Phantom Ruby copy and assimilate with it, he would instantly see visions of his world destroyed by Iblis and then the birth of Solaris, his greatest desire. In this scenario, Infinite is reduced to a simple, normal Jackal with no powers, and Mephiles takes the fight with 0 difficulty. But it's basically an impossible task to attack Infinite enough to retrieve the ruby off of his body, so we can discount this as a possibility. So with all that out of the way, how does this fight actually go? In a chance encounter, Infinite is just stronger and faster. He hard counters Mephiles' power boost from the Chaos Emeralds and is likely not getting damaged by any of his attacks. While he can't kill the immortal Mephiles, he can trap him in null space, where he could never escape. Conversely, Mephiles' only real win conditions are catching Infinite off guard and stabbing him in the heart with a 360 no-scope from a couple hundred yards away, or pulling off a tricky-dicky escape where he learns about the original Phantom Ruby and finagles a way to remove it from the present timeline. He basically only wins if he cheats. Mephiles may be the rotting soul of a dying god, and Infinite is just a rat with a shiny rock, but sometimes the rat comes out on top. Infinite wins 8 or 9 times out of 10. Stay frosty.